Hi folks, John here. This plant in front of me here is the Rotala Blood Red. Now this is the immersed form, and the immersed form is basically the form that grows out of the water. This is what the stem looks like. Now the way to tell this from the Rotala colorata, which is another plant that we sell, they look very similar. You know, if you buy stems from us, you might get confused. Oh, look, you've only sent me the Rotala Blood Red when you've bought the colorata as well. Is if you flip the plant over, you'll see that it's got a bit of a red hue, and then the blood red has got more of a teardrop or spear-shaped leaves, whereas the colorata has a much rounder shaped leaves, and the leaves are a bit more delicate on the blood red. Now there is also a difference as well when this plant eventually goes through the process from being in the immersed state, which is this state here, to the submerged state, which is a state that grows under the water line, and the picture above is the submerged state. Now that to get to that stage, the plant will need to transition in your tank, and that might take roughly 4 to 6 weeks. This plant, once submerged, it will give you a compact growth, okay, and whereas with the colorata, it'll give you more of a sprawling. It will basically sprawl through the tank and give you more of that sort of natural look, okay, whereas this will be compact, dense, it'll look quite neat, and it'll have a very deep red or crimson color, whereas the colorata will have a magenta, so red purple color, whereas this is a bright red color. Once transitioned, this is a great plant to have contrast against something that's green or something that's yellow, particularly either in the mid-ground or the background of the tank. Now this plant will require CO2 injection, about 30 ppm, to get the best colors, and you should have a nutrient rich substrate. Like with most aquatic plants, it needs to have a pH of about in terms of the substrate of about 6.5 to 7, but more on the acidic side as opposed to the alkaline side. Aquatic plants seem to have a preference for acidic soil, and I think that's because over millions of years of evolution, the plant in a freshwater stream, it's had a lot of detritus or fish waste, and stuff fall into the river and down onto the riverbed, and that just adds a lot of nutrients, which also brings about a lot of acidity with the plant. The other thing to take note is, if you want to get the deep crimson colors out of this plant, you need to use LED lighting, and it needs to be medium to high in terms of brightness. So when I say high in terms of brightness, the rule of thumb that I tend to use is if the light is shining all the way to the bottom and into the substrate, from the top of the tank to the bottom, and you can see that the light is hitting the bottom of the substrate, that's my definition of lighting that is high. And medium if it's hitting sort of the mid layer of the water column. So if you get high lighting, this plant will change its leaf structure and give you a deep red color, very similar to the color of blood. Okay, so it's an awesome plant, particularly if you want to use this plant to add an accent to the tank. You've got a lot of greens, you've got a lot of yellows, and you just want to add a striking red color. Now the other nutrients you need to add to this tank to give it the best color is just make sure if you're buying any plant fertilizer that it's got iron included inside the fertilizer, and potassium. And if you look at the back of it, it can't be iron that's in a very small amount. It needs to be a major component of the fertilizer. So if you go to a fish shop and you ask more about the right fertilizer for this plant, they should be able to direct you. But it certainly needs a fertilizer that has a lot of iron in it to get the best red color and potassium. Okay, so this is your Rotala Blood Red, and up the top here on the screen is the submerged form, and it'll in summary take about 3, 4, maybe up to 5 weeks of transition into the submerged form. And in summary, to get to that stage, I would suggest you either inject CO2 or have a lot of bioload. So what I mean by that is you have a lot of fish in your tank that produce a lot of CO2 that helps this plant transition, or you just inject CO2 through a CO2 system, and you make sure that the lighting is on the higher end, and you have a lot of potassium and iron in the fertilizer. That's it. Thanks.